Hello lords and ladies, my name is Archaic King, and today's video of Archaic Discusses is about Harvest Moon, The Lost Valley versus Story of Seasons. Now, you might think, okay, cool, a new Harvest Moon game's coming out. It looks a little bit different from past Harvest Moon games, but maybe they're doing something different. And then you look at Story of Seasons and you're like, huh, that's odd, I guess farm simulators are in, farming simulation games are in, and this is just like a spin-off or somebody's copying Harvest Moon. No. That's not true. Actually, Story of Seasons is the true Harvest Moon, while Harvest Moon The Lost Valley is Harvest Moon only in name. But you're thinking, what? What are you talking about? Well, let me explain in a way that might still be confusing, but hopefully it's not. Now, who makes Harvest Moon games? You know, who made A New Beginning? And who made A Wonderful Life? Well, it's the developer is Marvelous AQL, or Marvelous Entertainment, basically. They have been the ones who have really been making the Harvest Moon games since the beginning. Although they were actually, the company who originally made Harvest Moon was acquired by Marvelous Entertainment, but that's beside the point. Now, in Japan, the base name for story, not for Story Seasons, but for Harvest Moon has been, I believe, Bokuju Monogatari, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly, which basically translates to farm story, if I'm correct. Now, you might be familiar with a company named Natsume. Natsume have been the ones who published the Harvest Moon games outside of Japan, but not under Farm Story, but as Harvest Moon. So in Japan, Farm Story. Everywhere else, Harvest Moon. Until recently, Natsume was the one publishing and localizing the Harvest Moon games. But I believe that it's changed. Now it's Xseed Games. So what does that mean? Well, in a bit of an unfair move, Natsume decided they are going to make their own Harvest Moon games from now on. Because they own the name Harvest Moon. Technically, because they were the ones localizing Farm Story under it for all of these many years. So they technically own the name Harvest Moon. But they don't own Farm Story, they own Harvest Moon. So they're making their own Harvest Moon game called Lost Valley, which recently came out. Which you might have noticed is a tad bit different from past Harvest Moon games. Just a little bit. Mostly in the way it looks. But it's not Natsume. So what happened to Farm Story? What happened to Marvelous AQL and Xseed Games? Well, now they're calling their game Story of Seasons. But if you look at it, you can tell it's Harvest Moon. I made this video because I didn't want people to be confused. It would be if when Pokemon got localized, someone decided that they were going to make their own Pokemon games, the people who localized it, and then the original Pokemon games would have to be called something else, like Capsule Monsters or something. That's a little bit confusing, but basically, when you are purchasing Story of Seasons, or you're purchasing Harvest Moon The Lost Valley, and you're thinking, well, one's Harvest Moon, one's Story of Seasons, which one is the real one? Like, if you strictly want to buy the real Harvest Moon, I would go ahead and say buy Story of Seasons, because it's developed by Marvelous AQL, it's published in Japan by Marvelous AQL, and in North America by Xseed Games. It's technically the real Harvest Moon. Harvest Moon The Lost Valley is only, I don't want to be rude and say it's a fake Harvest Moon or it's a poser, but I don't have any other way to say it, so yeah, I would say that. It's kind of posing under the name Harvest Moon when it's not really Harvest Moon. I mean, the people who published it and localized it, basically translating it into, English and other languages, they decided to make their own Harvest Moon game. And, I mean, it's fair and it's unfair, because, yes, Natsume technically owns the right behind the name Harvest Moon. They own that intellectual property. So it's fair that they call their own farming simulator Harvest Moon. But at the same time, it's not fair because it's a carbon copy. It's not Harvest Moon. You were only translating the games, guys. You were publishing and localizing them. You didn't make the game. Well, they did make Harvest Moon Lost Valley. But I mean, they weren't the actual, it's not the actual Harvest Moon. It's not coming from Japan and being called Harvest Moon. It's just Harvest Moon. And I feel like, and I may be completely wrong, but I feel like the reason why they did this may have been because for years they localized Farm Story as Harvest Moon, and now they no longer get to do so. So I feel like they're like, oh, well, fine. We own the name Harvest Moon, so we're going to make Harvest Moon games. Up yours. So like now no longer, Story of Seasons can't be called Harvest Moon or else they'd get sued. Even though for many years it was localized in the name Harvest Moon. So I feel like Natsume did this sort of as like revenge and a middle finger to Marvelous AQL, but also because it's going to trick consumers. Like the casual player, because Harvest Moon is a pretty casual game and nobody really truly pays attention to who makes it. I actually had to find out, like, this is my wake-up call to who actually develops and makes the games. Because I was like, Harvest Moon? Story of Seasons? What's the deal? So I did some digging. So I feel like to the casual consumer who doesn't really pay attention to who makes what, they're not going to even notice. They're going to be like, well, the name Natsume is on the cover, and they've always seen the name Natsume on the cover of Harvest Moon games, so they're not going to think anything differently. They're going to buy it. They're going to think it's actually the Harvest Moon games that they've been buying for the past several years. When in actuality, if they were to go purchase the first Harvest Moon games all the way up, they would have to get Story of Seasons, because Harvest Moon The Lost Valley is not Harvest Moon. It's Harvest Moon in name only. I mean, yes, it shares pretty much the same things, because, it's still a farming simulator. But when you play Harvest Moon Lost Valley and compare it to Story Season, you can kind of tell. You can kind of tell which one's meant to be Harvest Moon and which one's not. So I made this video because I wanted to inform other casual consumers that, hey, if you only want the legit Harvest Moon, buy Story of Seasons. If you don't really care, buy both. Or buy one and ignore the other one. Although, if you go look up gameplay of Story of Seasons, it does look better than Harvest Moon The Lost Valley. I mean, Harvest Moon The Lost Valley is a good game. Like, seriously, it's a really good game. I've seen gameplay of it, and I still will probably purchase it myself. But if you're out there looking for the true Harvest Moon experience, I would go and get Story of Seasons, which comes out, I believe, February 20th, 2015. So, that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed this little information, and maybe this will help inform you about which game you want to buy, or which game you don't want to buy. Anyways, if you did enjoy this video and you would like to see more Archaic Discusses videos, please leave a like and a comment, and I will see you next time.